It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That is from the brand new release, simply known as 3. It is the Demons and Wizards. Name of that tune is Wolves in Winter. And on the line right now, we have the main wolf in this winter, Mr. Hansi Kursch. Hansi, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good, man. It is always good when we get brand new stuff from Demons and Wizards, and you know, if the last 15 years are any sampling, it's very rare that we get new Demons and Wizards, man. So very good.
Yeah, it's a nice album, but a sad story to know that it took 15 years. And well, I hope that whenever there is the next Demons and Wizards, it's not going to take another 15 years.
Sure. Now, Hansi, obviously it has taken 15 years. What caused it? Was it just your busy schedule with Blind Guardian and John's schedule not meshing up, or what?
Exactly. It was not meshing up at all. We realized that touring has become a bigger issue over the last 15 years than it was back in the days, and the schedules of Blind Guardian and Iced Earth, they more or less had aligned for the first 10 to 15 years of our career, but that changed drastically after Touched by the Crimson King. So whenever I would have been available, John was not around, and the other way around. So there was no chance. We spoke about that from early 2010 on, and we had some efforts to create space for this third album, but it never really was a doable option for us. So at the very end, we just really nailed it down in the end of 2018 and throughout the year 2019, which was the only available spot ever since.
Sure. Now, with a gap that large, were you still writing material that was potentially for Demons and Wizards, or do you not concentrate on it until you've got a schedule in order?
John and I are pretty much the same there. We do not really write songs for Demons and Wizards unless we decide that it is about the time to do so. Okay. There are exceptions. When John and I met in 2016, he provided me with 3 instrumental arrangements. He said he had no ideas about vocals for these ones. So he handed that into me, and I worked on that in the year 2017. These songs were New Dawn, Universal Truth, and Invincible. And technically, they have been written for Iced Earth and Sons of Liberty, but without vocals. And therefore, it was an option to use these tracks for Demons Wizards, and I would imagine that the one or the other track on the first Demons Wizards album might have been in John's mind for a while. He probably even have tracked them prior to Demons Wizards, but he, whenever he doesn't feel anything vocal-wise, he just put it aside. And we may have used some of these songs, but with regard to me, I can say for sure none of the melody lines I came up with were, created prior to what John and I did together.
Sure, which is really kind of amazing for you because you are a prolific writer. I mean, you do write a lot of music, so it's surprising to me that you don't have things that you've written and you're just like, well, it doesn't fit Blind Guardian, but I'll keep it in case, I get the right musical piece to come with it.
Yeah, there would be like a few tunes which I accomplished with either on my own or with other people over the years. But if I don't feel they're suitable for Blind Guardian, they usually aren't for Demons and Wizards as well, because John, brings his style as well. And that's part of the magic. That collaboration and that, how things are linked, even with the songs I mentioned, which he had probably arranged for Iced Earth or Sons of Liberty, they would turn out in 2 completely different directions if either John would do the vocal lines for this one or one of his vocalists he's working with, because it's, a different creation then. And whatever I put has that, has my individual handwriting, and that makes the difference. But as said, whenever I create a song which I'm not 100% satisfied with, I usually just put it aside and never use it for one of the big projects I'm involved in.
Sure.
I did some piano stuff with Michael Schören, who worked with Blind Guardian a couple of times. And these songs are really cool, but, I never felt the necessity to release them.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Hansi, let's talk a little bit about this new release, Demons and Wizards 3. It's not going to fool anybody that was a fan of Demons and Wizards into thinking it's a different band. It definitely has all of the elements that has made Demons and Wizards what it is. But there are songs on it that, where you did some different things, which is very, intriguing. For you as the artist, did you purposely try to bring some new flavor and some new sounds to the table?
No, I think it's a regular development, which John and I both have undergone. And it just happened at the right moment that we came up with this album, and we were able to put in these ingredients. And the other guy was always capable in picking that up and, transforming it into something which makes it even more Demons and Wizards like. I really felt that there was a good spirit throughout the whole songwriting period, and there was not a lot of talking about which direction we would, prefer for this album. We defined the qualities of the first two albums, and we both agreed on the simple fact that the atmospheric parts on these albums are the ones which attracted people. So we wanted those elements to be a part on the new Demons and Wizards album, as well as we knew that people would be, really interested in the more 70s rock approach of a band like Demons and Wizards. So we defined that a little stronger. That's maybe the pillar of this album, and all these additional alternative or more classical, these more darker elements, they came in during the production or during the songwriting period when we exchanged ideas, and we felt that they would be still suitable. I mean, there is no real there's nothing which we could not do with Demons and Wizards. That's a good thing. It's John's and my baby, and we have the qualities to do so, and we have a lot of the interests. And if that all is reflected in the music, of course, something new comes along.
Sure. Now, one of those new things that seemingly came along, unless I'm hearing something that you don't hear, is your vocal work on the song Midas Disease. Probably the most unique vocal of your career. It's like you said, it definitely has an 80s quality to it. I mean, my first thought was it had almost like a Blackie Lawless sort of a thing going on mixed with your sound. Did that song come naturally, or did you try something different with that one?
The basic arrangement was provided to me short before we started pre-production. So I didn't have a lot of time, and John, we were lacking 2 songs at that point.
Okay.
And John provided me with the idea if that, would do something with me. That was basically just, what John was curious about. And I liked the tune because I think it has that AC/DC approach. Mm-hmm. So thousands of ideas popped up in my mind, and they were all going into, I'm going to do a tribute for Brian Johnson and Bon Scott. And I maintained the voice into such a direction, but the turnout, and I have to agree on that now, is more Blackie Lawless vibe than it is a Brian Johnson or a Bon Scott vibe. But it pleases the song, I feel, and therefore nothing wrong with that. What I had to do, I had to be very careful when to sing that in the studio recordings, because I know how to maintain the voice into such a direction, but it's still very demanding. So I indicated from the beginning that this song would be the last song for this production to be sung, because it is easy to harm your voice a little bit, and there is no softness left afterwards for a while. And also there always is a minor risk of, hurting your voice if you go into such a raspy direction. But it's also part of my nature, so I like to do that.
Sure.
But I've never done that. I agree. I've never done that in such an intense way. That's maybe the most intense vocal performance up to now. And I don't know if I will ever go there again, because it's very unlikely that we come up with a song like this again. But it was a very enjoyable song, not only in composing, but also in performing in the studio, because it demands different qualities and a different attention, and it is more of a let your hair down song than most of the other songs, where you have to be precise. Of course, this had been showcased and quite accurately designed before as well, but not as tough as it was the case in other cases.
Okay, very good.
Sorry for the phone here.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
That's annoying. But, well, we should be good. Sorry.
All right, no problem. Well, let's talk about another song on the record. Probably the it's definitely the most epic song on the record, and it's probably the other one that I think is going to catch a lot of people's attention, just because it is such a big sounding song, and that's Children of Cain, the final song on the record. Very, very. If there's a such thing as a crossover between what you do in Blind Guardian and what you do with Demons and Wizards, I would say this is probably as close as it comes. Is that fair?
I have to think about that. I think it is, because I believe that this is the strongest expression vocal-wise on this album, with regard to the melody lines and with the approach of the vocals themselves during the production. I had been very picky there, and I found these musical arrangements John has provided me with, and I just saw the opportunity in making this middle section as operatic or musical-like as possible, but still in a kind of metal-orientated way. So therefore, you're right. It is pretty much what I would do with Blind Guardian as well. The exception is that the songwriting in Blind Guardian always goes into a different direction in comparison to that one. And I felt that these notes and the mood of the song was more or less designed for me, exactly. So I had millions and millions of ideas how to approach to each single line. And when doing my songwriting, I did like 3 or 4 completely different versions, and they were all as rich as this one. So you can imagine It took a little while, but the ideas have been there immediately, always. It was not like I had to, really struggle with myself to come up with a line which was as good or even better. And also the stack ups, they were quite logical for me. And that is a rare case if something like this is provided to me and it fits that well. So I was really happy about that one. And I would agree with you. To me, that is the strongest song on the album. And I believe it's going to have the biggest impact on people. But I mentioned that before when we had that discussion about the music in general. We talked about the 70s approach. And this also had been designed in this one the most suitable and most perfect way I can imagine. It holds a little bit of everything, like the 70s rock attitudes. It still has the heaviness and the depth of a Demons and Wizards song, but connected with what I would do in Blind Guardian, it makes a completely different blend.
Sure. Now, Hansi, with that song in mind, how much of that creative element that you have going, that you definitely had going when you worked on this song, is maybe partly a byproduct of the last venture that you did with Blind Guardian, or as Blind Guardian, I guess, because it was pretty much you and the orchestra with the Twilight Orchestra release, because that was obviously a very different project for you and something that you had to expand creatively to do. And and again, I'm speaking outsider looking in, like maybe that kind of kicked in the spark that ends up leading to doing such a operatic big song like Children of Cain.
With regard to the vocals in general, I have to say it has had a very big impact, because I'm even more confident about what I'm doing in the studio, and I learned a lot about vocal layers and how to treat them so they will stand out and be a set to the song which will make it better and stronger. Yeah. That is what I for sure have learned on the legacy of the Darklands production. With regard to the song, I have to say that is really the mixture of John and me creating a beast, and I'm just happy how it turned out. But yeah, there are many spots on the album, like in Dark Side of Her Majesty, or even in Diabolic, where you can feel that the way I approach to the vocal and how I treat them is strongly influenced by what I did just on the Legacy of the Darklands album. And I would not have been able to do something like that before. Sure. It appears to me far easier, because when going back to Demons and Wizards after working on this orchestral stuff over month and month and month and month, it was for sure going back to normal, and I felt like being more in a regular comfort zone by singing with the metal band and acoustic guitars instead of violins, because they somehow it's what I'm used to do on one hand, but on the other hand, it also blends better with the voice itself. So it was far easier for me to maintain that stuff nowadays, and that is a tribute to, or that's an effect of the orchestral album.
Sure. Now, one quick question about the orchestra album, about Legacy of the Darklands. Was that a satisfying release for you? Because I know a lot of bands have tried to work with an orchestra, but they've never, I don't want to say never, but most bands haven't found the way to do it correctly. They almost kind of just play their songs over top of the orchestra. And as a fan, that almost never works. With you, with Legacy of the Darklands, it really, really came together nicely as an independent piece, that did not feel like you just layered Blind Guardian over top of it.
I would agree with you. That was our intention from the beginning. And of course, even with these individual songs composed for orchestra, we had the discussion to involve the band as well, which would have been an option. And for some fans, it would have made the whole experience easier, because then they can relate to the metal band, and then by that enjoy the orchestra. Now we were sort of educating people by composing Blind Guardian music, leaving the band out completely, just adding my vocals in a slightly different garment, but still Hansi Kursch-like onto it. It was exactly what we wanted to do, and that's always a good thing about music, and especially about a project like that, because things can be very irritating and can mislead you. We luckily decided to go for the original idea, and this seems to pay back at the moment, because while some people, not all, but some people were confused by it in the beginning, more and more people are really getting into it, and you feel that it opens options for us, not only with regard to play it live ourselves, but also to license it to stage plays and stuff like this. So there is a lot of things going on, and it was a very interesting experience. As mentioned before, I learned a lot.
Sure.
And I mean, the commercial success is okay. It's fine. we can always sell more albums. I don't mind that at all.
Sure.
But for what it is, it really opened a few doors for us. And I have the feeling that the Blind Guardian fan embraces the album now. And this is all I can ask for. Plus, in addition, we really did what we wanted to do. I never had the feeling when writing these songs, that it would be too difficult for the fan to understand the album. I always related it to Nightfall in Middle-earth when explaining how it should sound. But I always said, well, it's like Nightfall in Middle-earth, but without a band, which is hard to imagine if you haven't heard it, of course. But I still think that as an explanation matches pretty good, and Nightfall in Middle-earth still is our most successful album. So even though we took up a big risk, it was not risky for us because we were so convinced about the music.
Definitely. Well, Hansi, you, as always, you're very busy. There's obviously Legacy of the Darklands for the Blind Guardian people, and certainly Demons and Wizards Volume 3 or just 3 is available as well. What's next for you? Are there plans to get out and, I don't know, play any kind of festivals or anything with Demons and Wizards, or do you go back to work with New Blind Guardian, or what's coming next?
We wish we could play at least any festivals within 2020, but we go back to our main bands. I'm in a Blind Guardian pre-production already.
Okay.
And that will go into a real production without any bigger breaks in between. So the Blind Guardian train started rolling some weeks ago.
Okay.
And we intend to have that album finished at the end of this year, so it can be released in the beginning of 2021. And that would be followed up by a tour, and that explains why we're not able to play with Demons Wizards, because for John the situation is pretty much the same. I would love to see Demons Wizards on the road again, maybe in 2022. Maybe there's a small chance for us to do some festivals in 21, but up to that point, I would say it's quite obvious that there won't be too much action after this album has been released.
Okay. Well, then good for us Blind Guardian fans, because at least we're going to get a tour. So that's perfect. So
you will get, and we'll get to North America quite soon after we started that tour.
Excellent. Well, Hansi, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the new release. Maybe tell us a quick story about it. So what would you like us to play to wrap this interview up?
If you haven't played Children of Cain so far, then for sure Children of Cain would be my first choice.
All right.
That is a very long song. It is a roller coaster ride through all the motions. It delivers the dark spirit which many people capture on this album, but it shows up a little bit of brightness here and there, but that is going to be destroyed by the lyrics and by the topic itself. It is a great song. Enjoy it.
All right. Well, let's check it out right now. It is Children of Cain. It is Demons and Wizards right here on your Classic Metal Show.